All right, so we are recording it now. So thank you guys for bearing with us for a minute while we were trying to get this to go live on Facebook. I'm so sorry that it just did not happen that way, but we are recording this session and we will, or this forum, and we will put it on Facebook later, and we will also we can put it on our YouTube channel as well. So thank you all for joining us. Welcome to our special webinar this evening, United We Vote. We are honored to join forces with Black Pflugerville to bring you the Pflugerville City Council Candidate Forum tonight. My name is Chantel Mays, and I'm the CEO of the Pflugerville Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber's mission is to unify organizations to create an actively engaged, flourishing community. And tonight's forum that we're hosting with Black Pflugerville is a great example of our mission in action. Providing this forum free to our community gives you the information you need to make an educated decision on your vote. For more than 35 years, the Pflugerville Chamber of Commerce has worked to build successful businesses, a vibrant economy, and a quality of life that benefits both our residents and businesses. Our members are an outstanding group of business, civic, and community leaders who are devoted to business success, professional growth, and providing an exceptional quality of life for those that live and work here. We are so grateful to have Black Pflugerville as one of our newest members and to partner with us on this forum. Because of their partnership, we are able to provide this forum at no cost to the entire community. So it's my pleasure now to introduce you to the president of Black Pflugerville, Alicia Jackson. Alicia.
Hi guys, good evening. Thank you all for joining us on this very important candidate forum. Black Pflugerville is a nonprofit, nonpartisan group that came into being in 2016 to help aid the equity advancements for Black families in Pflugerville. We have done that by promoting Black businesses and taking care of our historic colored edition in the cemetery there. We also helped create the Pflugerville Equity Commission, which we are super excited about, and we cannot wait to see the great things that are going to come out of that commission for the future. And I'm just really excited to hear what our candidates have to say. So thank you all for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Alicia. And again, thank you to the candidates for being here with us as well. Thank you, Black Pflugerville, for partnering with us on this forum. We appreciate everyone able to join us this evening. We know, things get difficult in the evening, so we are really so happy to have you joining us. And we appreciate our candidates who are, having this willingness to serve in a public office. And we thank you for being with us tonight to answer all of our voter questions. So now we'll explain how the forum will be run. So my colleague, Jonathan Gilliard with Black Pflugerville, will join me and we will introduce each candidate with a brief bio, and they will then have 60 seconds to tell you what their goals are and what they hope to accomplish if elected. After those opening remarks, we will begin with the questions that our voters submitted to us through email. Each candidate will have 1:30 to answer each question from us, and then they'll be alerted of the time limits by Alicia Jackson. She'll play a tone at 30 seconds and 15 seconds, and then a card to let them know it's time to stop. And then the candidates will wrap up their sentence. But if you don't wrap it up quickly, I will mute you if you keep going on too long. So we are broadcasting our forum tonight through Zoom. We will record this and we will post it to Facebook later. And also we will put it up on our YouTube channel for other people to watch as well. I do want to let you know that every candidate was invited. We did have one candidate who wasn't able to be with us tonight. That is Victor Toe, running for place 2. He will not be joining us, but we do have information on all of the candidates on the Chamber's website. You can look at that, pfchamber.com, vote 2020, and you'll find out some information there. So we'll get started now with our candidate introductions. Place 2, Cesar Ruiz. He was born in San Angelo, Texas. At the age of 17, with his father's permission, he enlisted in the Army Reserves. Afterwards, he properly enlisted in the United States Navy and served 8 glorious years. He returned home to receive a BA in history to become a high school teacher. He is the proud father of 3 wonderful children and has been married to Leah for 21 years. Cesar?
Well, thank you for having me. First, I want to say again, thank you to the Pflugerville Chamber of Commerce. I'm sorry, my dog is barking in the background right there. But thank you to the Chamber of Commerce and Black Pflugerville for putting this on and giving us the opportunity to be here. What Chantel didn't say is I put quote unquote glorious years with 21 after my wife. So she's listening right now, and I want you to say yes, they've been 21 glorious, wonderful years. So love you, honey, because I know she's watching. So yes, I'm running for Pflugerville City Council, place 2, and I want to thank you all for having me here. I'm running on a platform of public health, public safety, affordability, and basically economic prosperity. And I feel that I'm in the right position right now to be here. I've served on planning and zoning for the past 3 years, and I've watched this city grow. I've lived in Pflugerville for over 15 years. Back when, right in front of St. Elizabeth University, that road actually came to an end. So if you might remember, you had to turn and you had to curve and you had to go off over defending lane and everything else. So I've been here quite some time. I've seen it grow, and I believe that I want to take part and be a part of this wonderful thing called Pflugerville City Council. So again, thank you for having me, and I'll turn it over.
Sure. Next, we'll go to place 4. The first candidate will be Rudy Mateer. Rudy is the son of Haitian immigrants. He's one of the first generation in his family to complete higher education, graduating from not only the University of Texas College of Liberal Arts with a BA, but also has a master's in public affairs from the LBJ School of Public Affairs and a doctorate of jurisprudence for the University of Texas Law School. He has been a tireless advocate in the community, speaking and working on a host of issues ranging from teaching at-risk children, co-authoring an honor code for the University of Texas, helping forge a partnership with law enforcement, local law enforcement, that is, and the State Bar of Texas to address the issues of community policing and creating a pro bono legal advice clinics for the United States military veterans. Rudy?
Thank you for having me tonight. One of the best things about living in Pflugerville is the opportunity to go ahead and meet and talk to our citizens. It's one of the most unique places, not only in this state, but in the country, and I really enjoy it. The things that brought me to looking for a re-election, because I've appreciated and loved serving the last 3 years on council, is frankly the things that brought me in the first place. When we're talking about affordability, we need to make sure that we actually expand our tax base so we can lower the tax rate for specific families. When we're talking about what we need to do concerning our taxes from leveraging other entities such as Central Health and working with the Sobering Center, we need to continue to do that. When we're talking about public safety and public enforcement, we need to make sure that we have that true community policing in our partnership with our law enforcement officials to make sure that makes a difference. We want to continue those things. I also want to make sure and be frank with it, is that we're in the middle of a pandemic. And we know that there's a lot of economic, emotional, and psychological things that are going to be occurring from that. And we need to make sure that we're prepared and willing to go ahead and make sure that we meet our citizens where they're at. Too oftentimes, Pflugerville's forgotten when it comes to the conversations piece. And I'm proud to say that while I've been on council and helped go ahead and raise that profile to make sure that Pflugerville is seen not only as one of the alternatives in Travis County, but the place to be in Travis County. Thank you.
And the next individual I'll be introducing would be Rob Reckenbach, or Bob Reckenbach, excuse me. Bob has a long and impressive career spanning decades in military and space and industry. Mr. Reckenbach has 5 patents and is working on a cutting edge technology project, starting with the NASA launch and guidance computer that launched the Mercury flights, including Alan Shepard and John Glenn, the Gemini flights and the Apollo trips to the moon. He has worked for 37 years on medical devices, including FDA Class 3 life support cardiac pacemakers. His latest efforts created the Minimus spine triojection system to treat herniated discs in a single ozone injection. He has spent his career being a problem solver with successful results that save millions of dollars for many employers. Mr. Reckenbach has lived in Pflugerville for 20 years. Bob? I'm sorry, Bob, we can't hear you. Hold on, so we can unmute Bob.
Can I do?
There we go.
Can you hear me now? It says unmute myself.
You're good now. We can hear you.
Okay. I've been here for 20 years, as you said in that piece, and what has attracted me to run for city council is the fact that every time I've looked at a budget, every time I've looked at the financial reports, and every time I've sent in comments and suggestions to the city council or whatever, I've not been able to get answers to my questions. And I see numbers, and I'm very familiar with numbers. I see numbers that suggest that our city is at a precipice right now financially. And we must be very careful, and we must bring spending under control. Given the COVID crisis, we should not be planning to go into debt. My calculations say that if everything being asked for is actually bonded at some point between now and next year, the debt number for the city will go from $250 million to $1.18 billion. And I don't want Pflugerville to become Huttoville. I want Pflugerville to become Frugalville. And then we can have a great life because we won't be beholden to so many people. One of the problems I see in that is that we're worried about wants instead of needs. And our focus needs to shift back on essentials: police, water, sewer, those kinds of roads, those kinds of things. And that's where my focus will be. That's what I'm trying to accomplish with this candidacy.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Next, we have place 6, Jim McDonald. Jim McDonald is a dedicated father, small business owner, IT executive, and community leader who is proud to call Pflugerville home for more than 20 years. He has served his Pflugerville family in many ways. His volunteer efforts include being a martial arts instructor, member of various school PTOs, Pflugerville Education Foundation, and Senior Access. His leadership includes serving on HOA boards, past vice chair on the Parks and Rec Commission, past president of the Rotary Club of Pflugerville, secretary for the Downtown Business Association and Black Pflugerville, board member on the Pflugerville Community Development Corporation, and board member on Baylor Scott & White Central Texas Foundation. Jim?
Thank you, Chantel. It's an honor to be here in front of everybody, and I want to thank everyone for attending tonight and watching from the safety of your home. It's hard to come towards the end on the end of these things because everyone's already said all the important things, right? We've got public health. When public health became an issue for me when I heard that APH was moving their COVID testing site out of Pflugerville, and I reached out and worked with APH, Texas Division of Emergency Management, and PFISD to make sure that we had a location at the field, and then worked with the city to make sure we had a location at the old Wardyisms building. Public health is essential. PCDC's recently worked with Curative to bring them here so that now the tests don't take as long. They don't have to send them to California to be processed. They happen here. Public safety is a critical issue. Our water, I've got my own timer running. Water safety is critical, and of course the water supply as well. Quality of life issues always maintain on the forefront in terms of making sure that Pflugerville remains Pflugerville, why we all want to live here. So thank you for having me, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jim. And next we have David Rogers. I apologize, we don't have a bio on David, so I will just turn it straight over to him. David? Hang on, you're muted, David. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. Am I muted? Okay, not muted, right? Okay, all right. Who is this Mr. Rogers guy? Some of you already know me because I've been active in the Pflugerville community for a long time. I got active politically in Pflugerville about 5 minutes after I got here because I moved to Pflugerville 16 years ago with my wife, who was pregnant at the time with our first child. And I heard they were going to build a racetrack. Well, I moved to Pflugerville because Pflugerville is a great place to raise a family. And while racetracks are a lot of fun, they don't generally conduce to a good family environment. And I worked with Pflugerville's Families First. I worked to get Mark Gladney, our first Black city councilman, who was part of PPP, elected. I worked to get Bruce Wood and Victor Gonzalez, who was also part of PPP. Of course, Victor's our mayor now, but back then he was the first Hispanic councilman in the history of the city of Pflugerville. And he's been here forever, since the early 50s. And Victor has a tremendous institutional knowledge about the way that Pflugerville has grown and developed. When I first moved to Austin in 1971, I was a 7-year-old kid. I was born in Raleigh, and you know, Austin was 300,000 people and Pflugerville was 300 people. And that proportion has changed tremendously over the years. Now Austin is close to 1 million, but Pflugerville is close to 80,000. So we've gone from 1/1000th of the size of Austin to almost 1/10 of the size of Austin. That growth has been tremendous. In the time that my opponent and I have been here, Pflugerville has gone from 15,000 to 80,000. That's huge growth, and it's very important that we keep up with that growth. Now, I'm an attorney like my friend Rudy.
David, you're going to need to speed up. You're going over. We need to get to the Q&A. So
okay, just who I am. I'm a lawyer with my own firm. I had a retail business before that. I've lived in Pflugerville for 16 years. I've been active in Pflugerville city government and community organizations. And thank you, neighbors, for tuning in and giving me a chance to serve you.
thanks, David. Sorry to do that. I did let you go over a little bit since we didn't have your bio, but we needed to go ahead and get started with the questions. So we will start the questions with place 2. You will start first on this question. The question is, what do you consider to be the most important issues facing residents in our city right now? So we will start with you, Mr. Ruiz.
Well, currently, well, hold on. Am I on?
Yeah, you're good. We can hear you.
Currently, right now, one of the biggest problems facing Pflugerville is affordability. We're growing at such a rapid rate. Our homes are becoming to the point where it's just really starting to become unaffordable to be here. You know, and talking with and working with some of the developers here, I see a lot of potential of affordability coming back here. But we also have to manage this growth here in City Council as far as our spending. I believe that the current City Council has done a really great job as far as spending. I know that that's probably going to be a controversy topic right now, and there's a lot of people that will disagree with me, but watching them, seeing them behind the scenes, seeing how they're spending, really, we have to manage our infrastructure. And a part of this growth and affordability it has to deal with our infrastructure, our roads, our water, our waste. These are things that are not going to go away as the city continues to grow. And as a city councilman, that's one of the top priorities I have is planning our infrastructure for the future, not just 5 years from now or 10 years from now, but we have to plan 50 years from now. We can't kick this proverbial can down the road. We have to take care of it now. We have to address it now. And we have to address the affordability issue as far as income within our residents. We have to control the taxes. We have to control the rates that we're charging. And that's one of the things I will work hard on and diligently with our city council to work to help and ensure that our citizens have that wonderful place to live, the place they can call home. Nobody should ever be priced out of their home like in East Austin. And that's the last thing I want to happen here in Pflugerville. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rudy, we'll move to you next with the same question. What do you consider to be the most important issues facing our residents right now?
Well, when I think about what brought me to council in the first place, when I was asked by Mayor Coleman, Mayor Gonzalez now too as well, and other council members to run for council, one of the things I said I wanted to do is I'll go if I can make a difference. And I looked at a platform regarding, just like I said, regarding lowering the taxes, lowering the tax rate. You got to expand the tax base. You've got to get these businesses, industrial businesses over here as well, so you can shift the burden from the residents. We had to do a better job of actually working with some of these tax entities that we pay for right now, like Central Health, as Councilman McDonald pointed out, where they're making sure that APH and other things are actually making sure they have the resources here in Pflugerville. At the same time, working with Texas Workforce Commission, because one of the things that I truly believe is that when we're talking about actually higher ed, we need to redefine what higher ed is. We need to make sure that we actually have job training that doesn't burden folks with the burden of colleges right there as well. So we have redevelopment training here. We've done that through PCDC. And I look at, frankly, the historic color edition. I was looking at that area needed to go ahead and reflect the rest of the city. Looking forward right now, no other question, no other answer for it is their pandemic. Because our pandemic and what was COVID-19, look what we're doing right now. Look how we're sitting here right now as well. We know economically it affected people. We looked at what's going on with our schools. And ultimately, we know that there's psychological issues and burdens that hamper people because of the, what's happened with this as well. And the inability to be around people and folks and people they care for. So, and therefore, we need to be even more judicious about what we're looking at regarding our taxes and what we spend our taxes on with that as well. And that's something that I think we need to concern on. And I'm proud to see that council's reiterating those points from there for a variety of different issues. If we can get that down, if we can make sure that we actually leverage our resources to the best of our ability to make sure we pay for things too long, that's how we'll get ahead and get through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. Bob, you are up next. What do you consider to be the most important issue facing the residents of our city right now? We can hear you now, Bob.
Okay. For me, I'm trying to get my arms around the numbers, the dollars we've been talking about in the recent sessions of the city council and so forth, the bonds that are out there, the sudden increase in water rates and so forth. Given the COVID and all, this is coming at a very bad time. This is really slamming people. And as a senior, I have a lot of friends that are seniors and neighbors. And one of the neighbors near us is living on $600 a month and lives in a nice home, possibly appraised at the same value as my home. That turns out to be $7,200 a year. I don't see how she can pay her taxes and eat. And there's no shortage of things like that where if the city would make an adjustment, say of 3%, we would be able to reduce the taxes they spend by doubling their exemption, for example. And really, there's a number of groups of people out there, the seniors are one, our veterans, disabled, so forth, that really need somebody that remembers them when it comes time to spend money and set priorities. That has not seemed to work out well for them in recent days. So my focus is on essential spending only and getting spending under control and focus on the needs first and foremost. Police, water, sewer, roads. Parks are interesting, but we have a fine park system right now. I wouldn't spend another nickel on a park system other than to maintain it. We have a beautiful system. We need to maintain it, but I don't think it's time to spend $42 million to somehow improve our parks. And we are spending
I believe
money
you're out of
on
time,
projects.
Bob. Am I correct, Alicia? Are we over time on that one? Okay, let's go to place 6. Jim, we'll let you start with what you feel is the most important issue facing residents now.
We got to click this box here. All right. Thank you for the question. Definitely, there's a lot of important issues facing the city right now. And I think as a council member, it's difficult to choose the most important one because you have to balance the complexity of all the issues that we're faced with. Obviously, the pandemic is in front of all of us. And it's something that we're looking at in terms of the Pflugerville Cares grant program. The Chamber did a great program with help from the Pflugerville Downtown Association. They funded part of that in PCDC to help small businesses to survive this. Because even though the state shut down a lot of businesses, they still have their rent and electric bills and phone bills to pay. And so I know all those small businesses are appreciative. So public safety continues to be a primary concern, wearing your mask. making sure that you wash your hands and things like this. And just a side note, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So wear pink. We had some pink masks printed up from a local mask manufacturer here in town, so we can support local in the same way. I think it's important to make sure that we continue to shift the tax burden away from residences. When I moved to Pflugerville back in the 90s, we were a bedroom community. We were here to have houses to support .comers that came here like me, that had jobs in downtown Austin. Since then, we've been able to increase our commercial value property so that tax value has shifted. So as we've grown, our taxes haven't grown as much as, say, the values of our houses. Whenever your house value goes up, that's a good sign that your city government is doing a good job. So I caution for anyone to select a most important thing and make sure that we understand that life is complex and we must deal with the complexities of all the issues that the city is being faced with.
All right, thank you, Jim. And last on this question, David, what do you consider the most important issue facing our residents?
Thank you very much. I think there's no question about it that it's spending and it's taxes. And Rudy is absolutely right that the COVID has a huge impact on what we can do there. We have to have compassion for the human beings who are suffering because of the COVID. And I don't just mean people who actually are sick. I mean people whose jobs have gone away, right? Everybody who worked at Mr. Frank's Hot Dogs lost their job. Everybody who worked at Uncle Gary's Bar lost their job. And there are people who still have their jobs, but have had their hours drastically cut. The Pecan Street Deli is open only about 70% of the hours that it was open before. So that means all of those people have less money to take home. And at that point, Jim, you voted to increase property taxes by 8%. And you increase property taxes 8% every year. And in 9 years, you've doubled property taxes, especially in the time of COVID. It is not appropriate to be making these kind of gigantic raises in the tax rate. And that doesn't just affect people who own their own homes, senior citizens, people on a fixed income. It also affects people who rent, because let me tell you, the people who own the property that renters live in are going to pass that 8% increase along. And that's just a bad fiscal decision to jump tax rates that much. Now, I know that ultimately the council voted not to do that, but just bringing out that idea in the middle of this pandemic, that's just not the way to govern. We have to have compassion for our neighbors. You know, my opponent talked about Pflugerville.
David, you're over. You're already at 2 minutes.
Okay.
So we'll move on. I think Jonathan's gonna ask the next questions, but I will say respectfully, I don't want to compete with the national debates. This isn't a debate, it is a forum, and it is 100% fine to comment on what city council has or hasn't voted for. But let's please be respectful and maybe not call each other out, because I can't go back and then ask him to rebut anything that someone has said. So, all right, Jonathan, I'll let you go with the next questions.
Sure, we're going to start with place 4. So the question here is, after the election, the pandemic will still be going on, unfortunately. So if elected, what will you do to lead our city safely through this pandemic? And since we're starting with place 4, we'll go with Rudy first.
I mean, Jonathan, that's a really good question. It's an important question. So Jim was exactly right. In the middle of our pandemic, we got alerted that, in fact, what was going to happen was that Central Health was going to actually, through a communicator, was going to pull some resources from Pflugerville to go ahead and address another part of the Travis County. totally unacceptable. Went into action regarding specifically with that to make sure that we have the services here with that. When I started hearing that people were having $150 to pay for a COVID-19 test, ridiculous. So I worked with Central Health and worked with the folks to be able to get that testing free here in Pflugerville. Additionally speaking, like Jim said, regarding curative, that's one of the things that's great about attracting these businesses, because not only do they expand our tax base and allow for the ability for us to be able to lower, our tax rate on the specific residents, but you can have the resources, you have the businesses here in the city. My wife's family's been here for 30 years. When Dave talked about the growth in the city, it's absolutely astonishing. 2017, we had 60,000 people here. Now we have close to 80. At our ETJ, you have another 35, you have about 110,000 people out here right now as well. There is no reason why, when we're in the middle of a pandemic, people should be looking at pulling resources or trying to go ahead and do anything to massage or get away from that as well. It's the reason why we created the CARES Act, Pflugerville CARES grant, to make sure that we were able to go ahead and give our small local businesses some funds with that as well. But I also want to reiterate this. The majority of your tax rate comes from what's going on down the street over at the school board. The school board makes up, the school district makes about 60% of your taxes. Now you're having the school district having to be funded, which was funded differently by a proposal by the legislators last year that's underfunded coming this year. CARES Act funds weren't appropriated for the school district. So we, as one of the few cities in Texas, looked to see what we can do. And we gave some funds to the school district for remote learning and looking from there as well. We've got to be smarter when we're getting dictated regarding these funds to make sure that we have the resources necessary to take care of our whole community. It's not just one part of Pflugerville, it's all of Pflugerville that needs to be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. Bob? Same question. Let me see. And there you go, Bob.
With regard to COVID and so forth, I think also we may be able to provide, perhaps in your water bill or something, some simple guidelines about how to be more healthy. Most people that are having trouble with these kinds of things are low in vitamin D3. That's something very simple and easy to use. I take it every day, and I'm doing fine. I have no trouble fighting off things like that. This COVID has been bad because of when it first got here, people weren't sure how to handle it, but now we know exactly what to do. And the doctors here in Texas have led the way in many cases on dealing with this. So I think we can help by educating people with simple, basic things. Take your vitamin D, take your vitamin C every day. And if you do feel like you're getting sick, go see the doctor, because he knows what to do. And there may be things, like Rudy said, where we can do make other connections for them and remind them about other services and so forth that may be helpful to them, and make those connections for them, and take advantage of the fact that we put a little note in the water bill every month.
Thank you, Bob. Caesar?
All right, thank you. Well, I think Rudy hit the nail on the head when he said that working with the healthcare facilities. I mean, that's top priority. I mean, that's number one. We should be working with them and ensuring that everybody in Pflugerville has the right to have some kind of testing, especially free testing. I knew a lot of people who really could not afford it, whether their insurance didn't pay it or for whatever reason, maybe their insurance just charged too much money. And the moment I started seeing, I don't know, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know who provided it, but the testing at the field for free, and it included the swab test, not the through the nose type of test that everybody, including my wife, hated, which I'm sure, no doubt. I mean, it's terrific. And they started providing this, and that was wonderful to the community. I mean, you saw a line lined up around the stadium at first for people who reduce those fears, get them get this test and ease their tension. But at the same time, we have to support our small businesses. Former Austin Mayor Lee Leffingwell, and fellow veteran, once told me that small business is big business, and we'd be fools to let that slip through the cracks. And we'd be foolish here in Pflugerville to let our small businesses fall through the cracks, as many of them have through COVID-19. If there's funding out there to get to them, let's get it to them. Let's help them. Let's help them regenerate their business and help them get going. They're too important to let go. Let's partner up with our schools. Let's make this happen. I mean, far too long has the city council, I'm sorry, there's my time. So I will just say that let's continue the outreach, let's continue this, keep going, and let's get the information out there. Let's do a better job educating our public. Thank you.
All right, next we'll go with place 6, and we'll start with Jim.
Jonathan, could you repeat the question to make sure I answer it correctly, please?
Sure. After the election, what do you plan to do for the city to get us safely through this pandemic?
Thank you. So I think Rudy touched on some of the things that we're currently doing, and he's absolutely right in terms of the CARES Act that was targeted for our schools, was targeted in lieu of other state funds. And so it was a net zero for them to even try to go through the paperwork of claiming it. So after the election, the pandemic's still going to be here. And so the first priority for me as your council member to make sure that Pflugerville has access to the vaccines that are coming out, and not just whatever vaccine du jour is put out there, but the vaccines that are scientifically vetted and have peer support among the medical community. Vaccination, of course, is the next best step that we have to protection from this disease, and next best step that we have from wearing a mask right now, washing our hands, not touching our faces when we're in public. So these things continue to be important, but making sure that we have access to the vaccination would be the #1 priority moving forward. And upon that, we got to make sure people get back on their feet. Rudy also mentioned working with Texas Workforce to make sure that we have employment opportunities here, partnering with large businesses like Amazon that's going to bring 1,000 jobs to Pflugerville, to make sure that people have places to work here in Pflugerville, so you can live here, work here, and play here all at the same time. And other than that, just being engaged with the community, being engaged with all the different organizations to know what the ask is, so that we're prepared to answer those questions on the dais come November. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And now we'll go to David. And apologies, meant to shake this up. You won't always be last here, Dave.
That's all right. I want to say that I agree with Jim that we want Pflugerville to be a great place to live, work, and play. And that compassion for the victims of COVID, and again, the victims of COVID are people who live in fear of COVID, not just people who have the actual disease. I mean, let's be clear, the actual disease is very rare and the recovery rate is very high. And especially with new medicines that are coming on board, vaccines, with other treatment programs, there is a lot that we can do so that nobody in Pflugerville has to pass away from the COVID. I would love it if we could get all the way through this and not have a single COVID death happen between now and whenever the end of the epidemic is. I think Bob is absolutely right that we need to educate people. I think individuals can take responsibility for their own health. We do that every year with the flu, right? You have the option to go get a flu vaccine if you want one. I get one every year, and it seems to work. When I was a younger man, I didn't get the vaccine, and maybe I just counted on being young and healthy. But now that once I passed 45, I thought maybe that vaccine is a good idea. So I think the city can publicize where the vaccines are available. I think the city can subsidize the vaccines for people who need the vaccines to be subsidized. I think it's great. Rudy has taken the lead there to make sure that Austin Public Health has the testing facilities available here in Pflugerville. And that's part of the process. You test people early and often, and you can control the spread. And if you get tested every week or twice a month, and you don't have it, you can go about your life without fear. And as FDR said, the only thing that we have to fear is fear itself. And this early testing and early knowledge can help us to conquer the fear so that Pflugerville can get back to normal, so that we can go to businesses, so that, you know, Jim's business can open up 100%. You know, I know he is being impacted by the governor's COVID order and the county judge's COVID order right now. His business is under strain. And if we can get past the fear, as FDR said, then we can rebuild Pflugerville and make it, you know, a great place, in Jim's words, to work, live, and play.
I believe we're out of time, correct, Alicia?
Mhm.
Okay, all right, we'll move on to our next question. And this time we will start with place 6. So we will start with you, Jim, on this one. We had so many non-essential businesses that did shut down. We've talked about many of them throughout this program so far. What role do you see the city playing in helping those small businesses survive and come out of this pandemic?
Yeah, that is a difficult proposition. One of the things that we've done already is making sure to help support those businesses with grants through the Pflugerville CARES Act. We've been able to allocate over $1 million towards local small businesses in 3 tiers, from very small to medium to a handful of the larger businesses. But it's going to be a difficult thing, right? Because that money came from the feds, that was passed down through the county, that came through us, and so it was federal money. And seems like these days, when you're talking about $2 trillion stimulus packages, it seems like the government prints money. Pflugerville doesn't have that option, so we have to be very cautious and responsible in the way that we go about taking care of our small businesses. Unfortunately, the harsh reality is that some of those businesses are going to close their doors. Some of them as a result of COVID, some of them because, like Mr. Frank's, Greg and Noreen closed down 2 years ago. And so they're not really victims of COVID, but they chose to move out to another place closer to their home. But looking at how we stimulate businesses moving forward is, I mean, again, it's always about money. And so we have to make sure that we know where we're going to find the source for that funding, and actively seek to get state and federal grants to bring in money that we can help support our businesses here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. David, you will answer next. I can repeat it for you as well. All the non-essential businesses that have been forced to close because of COVID, what do you see is the city's role in helping them survive and come out of the pandemic?
Rudy and I were talking about this the other day. There is a principle in American law that goes back all the way to the Declaration of Independence and to the founding of the Constitution, that when the government takes something away from you, the government has to pay you for it. It's in the 5th Amendment to the United States Constitution. It's in Article 1 of the Texas Constitution. Government has taken away from all of these businesses the right to do business. And that means the government has to pay them for that right. They have to be compensated for that. Now, the city of Pflugerville hasn't taken many of those rights away. Most of that has been done at the state and at the county level. But I would say that the city of Pflugerville City Council needs to act as a united body and go to the legislature and go to the county commission and say, look, we understand why you did this in an emergency, but you've got to compensate these people. Their lives, their businesses have been severely damaged, in many cases, just destroyed. And the principle of compassion doesn't just apply to the person on the deathbed. It applies to the person whose property you have taken in order to help the guy on the deathbed. We've got to the extent we can, make direct payments to those small businesses and the unemployed, and we've got to push the county and the state to do the same.
Thank you, David. Caesar, you are up next, sir.
All right, let me get this started because I know I'll go over. Yeah, this is a difficult topic. I mean, as it's been stated before, this happened at no fault to the businesses. This is something that's really affected our entire community. First, I'd like to see if there's any more COVID funds out there. I mean, we need to figure out how to get these funds out there, or to the, I should say, the CARES Act funds, and get these out there to the businesses. I think, as a city councilman, what I'll do is I'll get with our city manager and work with our current council to work also with the Chamber of Commerce to find out and identify these businesses that are struggling. Let's take a proactive approach then, rather than a reactive approach, because once they close, it's too late. They're not coming back. My dad ran a business that was dependent upon the oil business back in the 80s, and when the oil boom went bust, so did he. So I know what it's like to be a part of a family that loses a business, and there we were out there in the cold and struggling. So we have to remember there's a lot of businesses, a lot of people out there who are really struggling at no fault of their own. I'm the last person to point blame at anybody, so I'll just say that instead of pointing the finger, let's start working together proactively. I mean, yeah, this is where we need to go. Let's get out there, identify these businesses, and let's help them out. And let's make them successful, because if they're successful, we're successful as a city. So let's do that. Let's be compassionate and caring. Thank you.
Thank you. Rudy, you are up next.
A little sensitive about this. Two of the hardest things have been being on council, dealing with this pandemic, have been working with people to be able to get food. Working with Central Texas Food Bank and the local food communities to actually get food and subsidies to people, because you don't realize, many of us don't realize how much our schools are utilized to get food to these children. And what happens when the school closes down? What happens when these food shelters are overtaxed? Where do you get food and hunger? And that was one of the things I worked on very, very early on with Commissioner Trevelyan and other folks, to try to see what we can do to be able to get food in the community, get folks box lunches, get food to dinner and folks. I mean, I got to give a lot of credit to Superintendent Killian and the school district regarding working to be able to get that food out there. The second part about this pandemic is just like what we're talking about right here. And Dave mentioned what Caesar said, Jim's are cognizant of, and Bob's is as well, is that you have these businesses closed for no other reason. They did nothing wrong whatsoever. And so it's our responsibility to try our best, and through CARES Act funds, whatever we can do to do that. Many of us spent so much money out of our own pockets to go ahead and support these local businesses, going out to these local businesses, buying food, I don't even drink coffee, but I'm at West Pecan spending, money to go buy gift cards and giving them out, et cetera, right there, because you want to support these businesses, because small business, local businesses are the fundamental spine of the economy of this country. Right now, we have over $5.7 billion that Governor Abbott has not spent regarding COVID-19 funds regarding that. We need to go ahead and advocate, just like I did before with the expansion of 130, and when I to TxDOT and talk to those folks regarding the expansion of that as well. We need to advocate for that to go into the cities, because right now, the only cities that have a choice regarding CARES Act funds are cities over 500,000 people. Are you trying to say that those cities are more important than us? That those cities know better than us? That the county should be filtered through the counties? I don't think so. We need to go and help and work to change those guidelines and make sure that we get the funds to people in the hands that they need it. Thank you. And thank you, Alicia. My bad.
All right, Bob, you are going to finish up this question. I will read it while you're getting unmuted. We did have so many businesses that were non-essential that had to shut down due to the pandemic. What role do you see the city playing in helping them survive this pandemic?
I agree basically with many of the things that have been said about reaching out and getting funds that are available, that are out there, that for whatever reason just haven't been scooped up yet at the state level, at the federal level, and certainly make as much of that available as possible. But once again, I think it's not a bad idea to tell people, take your vitamin D and shop locally. I think we need to all stick together, and the city has a unique place because it goes into every house and every apartment. And I believe that we have an opportunity here to be a helpful guide of sorts with medical advice to some extent on taking your vitamins, and also guidance with respect to how to do the wise things to move forward and support our businesses all around here. And of course, we want more businesses to come because businesses sales tax allows us to offset property tax appraisals and the cost of property taxes. So it's so important to keep the small businesses in our town healthy and happy and doing a great business, because when that happens, the property owners benefit greatly.
Okay. We'll move on to our next question. We will start with place 2 this time. So Caesar, get ready. When you hear Black Lives Matter, A, what does that mean to you? And B, what policy reforms, if any, will you champion to improve race relations?
Thank you again. When I hear Black Lives Matter, it hits me personally, because I know I fall in that category as well, in the sense I may not be Black, but I am a Hispanic male who has been targeted as well in the past, growing up in West Texas. All lives matter, yes, but some of our lives get targeted a little bit more. And, you know, it's a fact. I mean, people can dismiss that, but it is a fact. And it's just a fact that we have to deal with, and we have to build relations with our council, build relations with our chief of police, build relations with our community. It's all about education. The more educated a person is on another race, another group of people, the less likely they are to have some animosity towards them. Growing up in West Texas in the 70s and 80s, I certainly saw that. I mean, it was a lack of education and a lack of growing up around people of different culture. I think that, definitely we as a city can always do more, being more culturally diverse. I mean, let's have a cultural fair, with not just Blacks and Mexicans or Hispanics or anything like that. Let's have a cultural fair with all ethnicities. Let's come together and join as one, and let's show the people that we can make Pflugerville really a place where all walks of life can live and be happy. This is going to be hard. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This is we've been working on this for over a century, but it has to start somewhere. And if we build it here in Pflugerville, it's like, I believe Robert Kennedy once said, an ideal is like when you throw a stone in a pond, and the ripples, tiny ripples of hope, ideals of hope that kind of flow out, and sooner or later they encompass that whole pond. And I think that we start here. We start that ripple, and we move forward and watch it grow. Let's make change here in Pflugerville. Thank you.
Okay, next I'm going to go to place 6, and Mr. Rogers, would you like to start? Yeah.
I'm so excited I get to go first. So I want to repeat your question and make sure I understand it. The question was, what does Black Lives Matter mean to you? And what policy reforms would you make to reflect that? Is that the question?
That is the question.
All right. When I hear Black Lives Matter, I think, duh, obviously. The lives of our Black citizens matter. The lives of our Hispanic citizens matter, our Asian citizens. Every American deserves respect and the equal rights that are promised in our amended Constitution. Okay, the promise of America wasn't made good entirely in 1776, and it's not made good entirely today, but we are working towards that, and every Black person deserves an equal shot. Now, as Caesar said, I ain't Black. I'm never gonna be Black, but I've been a minority. See, when I first moved to Austin, I lived on the east side. I went to Maplewood Elementary School. Now, you guys who are newer to the area don't know much about that, but when I was there, I was one of 2 white kids in my class. So I went to school with Black and Mexican American kids, and I don't think there were any Asian kids at Maplewood at the time or in East Austin. But, you know, I've had the experience of living in a Black neighborhood. When I went to the University of Southern California, I lived in South Central Los Angeles. Again, the experience of living in a Black neighborhood. Been there, done that. Now, you know, still not Black, but I can see what's going on there. Now, one of the great things about Pflugerville, one of the reasons we moved to Pflugerville is Pflugerville does not have the history of racial problems that Los Angeles or Houston or Milwaukee or New Orleans or even Austin have. When I was talking to Mark Strama years ago about an unrelated issue, he described Pflugerville as a Black flight community. And Black people fled Austin and the high taxes in Austin and the unsafety, and they came up here to Pflugerville for lower taxes and more safety. And I think Pflugerville needs to continue to be welcoming, just like it was when Mark Strama and I were talking about that 10 years ago.
Thank you. Jim, do you want me to repeat the question, or do you got it?
Got this one, sir. Thank you.
All right.
And I apologize in advance if I get a little emotional here, because Black Lives Matter to me means that we need to be looking at the data and understanding that implicit racism still exists in our country. We live in one of the greatest countries in the world, but we live in that great country because we are aware and we pay attention to what's going on, and we are not afraid to affect change. When at the murder of George Floyd, we got together and knew we had to do something. And so we organized, and by we, I mean Black Pflugerville organized an In Remembrance March. And we organized that march within 4 or 5 days. We reached out to city leaders. We had a Zoom call with them. And we had the chief of police on that call. And we said, we don't want you standing there on the sidelines. We want you marching with us. And when that day came on Saturday, we had, again, a local mask manufacturer was there to hand out masks. We could make sure that primarily everyone was safe, first and foremost, but that we had this opportunity for healing to march together. We had 20 plus officers marching with us in the crowd of over 300 people. There wasn't an altercation, a rude word. There was sharing, and there was compassion, and there was understanding. And that was definitive of what community policing is. And so that when you see an officer in Pflugerville, you don't see the uniform. You see Chet, you see Tony, you see Jessica, you see the person. And that's the same thing that we want when the officers look at us. They don't see a white man. They don't see a Black man. They see us by our names, and they recognize who we are. And there's so many things that I could go on about this, but it's important for us to affect policies for change. So the city has an unconscious bias testing program, implicit bias testing program, not only for our officers, but for all public facing staff in terms of water billing and public inspections and everything. And so we do this annually throughout the year. And there's other things we can do in terms of demilitarizing our police to help psychologically understand the purpose of being there is to assist and aid, not to fight and contend with and disarm. It's there to be part of the solution, not to create or accelerate the problem. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Going to place 4, Bob, would you please, would you like for me to repeat the question, or do you have it?
No, as someone who's worked in a lot of situations, and because of my medical background, I've had to scrub for surgical procedures and assist physicians in our clinical trials on new instruments and things like that. I know that all lives matter in the sense that we're all the same. When you need something so that you're healthy and strong, you need it, and it needs to be provided. And in my mind, because of my experience, I've trained a number of people, and several were Black people along the way. With what I did for them was I stayed after work and had training sessions on electronics. We had some folks that used to work in a bakery, and this was a few years ago, but they were not well paid. If you look at the price of bread, you can maybe understand why that is. But I think the city would do well to consider the fact that the resources that are in the city could volunteer some extra time here and there and open up the opportunities, especially to young people, but certainly if there are people out there that are in between jobs and would like to consider learning a new trade or something, that some of the employees of the city could teach them in an evening course or something through the week. I would think that would be a wonderful way to do two things: improve the training, improve and demonstrate our relationship and commitment to the Black folks and Black businesses in our community. And I think the other thing we need to do is get those roads fixed there, and you know where they live.
Thank you, Bob. Rudy, we will end with you with this line of questioning.
You're gonna have to indulge me for a second because this is a really important, essential issue to talk about. You asked me specifically what I think about when I think of Black Lives Matter. I think of my children. When I speak to our youth, when I go ahead and give speeches at the high schools, elementary schools, et cetera, something I reiterate to each and every one of those kids is this: you live in a town that was a small, old German community that changed overnight to a majority minority community without the strife, without the issues, with a lot of the things that come with it in a lot of different communities. That's atypical. And the reason that's been the case is because you truly have a community that's laid the foundation beforehand to speak and deal with these issues. You have law enforcement, this is like Jim said, that truly understands what community policing means. It's not just something you say, it's not something you just put in a document, but what it truly means to know who you're policing, to know your neighbors, to know the folks on the force and know what they're out there for that. But they laid the foundation beforehand. I'm chair of the African American Lawyers section of the State Bar of Texas. We're looking and trying to see policy changes, not only here in this city, but across the state regarding what we can do with policing. Our first phone call to Texas Municipal Police Association. You actually have the executive director, strangely enough, who lives here in Pflugerville. Because if we're going to deal with these issues, we're going to talk about systemic change, we have to go ahead and reach across the borders and talk about these issues and see what we can work in hand to make a difference. I want to also make this very, very clear, because I know that some people get confused and befuddled about this issue. Black people, people of color, do not hate law enforcement. Anyone who tries to put you in that box or tries to say otherwise, they're lying to you. They're trying to dissuade the situation. They're changing everything. What we don't like is bad policing, which no one should like, period, end of story, whoever you are whatsoever. You don't have the issues here in Pflugerville because you had community policing coming here in the first place. You had someone who tragically got killed, Javier Ambler, who was a citizen here, not in Pflugerville, but somewhere else because of what happened when bad policing gets involved with that. You have the just position right here that you can look at. You should be proud of your the police department here. I'm damn proud. There's a reason why I have my blue band on, and I've had it on for the last 7 years. But you should also be proud that the people that are trying to make systemic changes and work together to bring people together in this community have been working for a long, long time to make that happen. Pflugerville is unique. Pflugerville is atypical. It is different. And I tell these kids they're ambassadors to other places in the world when they go around talking about this issue. But also remember this, Pflugerville is an example that it can work, that you can come together, that you can make a difference on these issues. And don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. You can support the police and support Black Lives Matter, period. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. Moving on to the next question, we will start with place 2. So Caesar, you will start with this one. Do you think that our Main Street downtown area is healthy and successful? And if not, what would you do to change that?
Ooh, that's a loaded question, huh? It's a good one. Is it healthy and successful? Honestly, no. No, it's not. It can get better. It does need revitalization. I believe we did have an organization or a board or a committee that was put together to look into this and help things out and revitalize downtown. There are a lot of businesses downtown that do struggle. I think that at this point, what was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I had to unmute. What would you do to change it if you don't think it's
Okay.
successful?
Definitely. Well, first off, the city needs to do a better job with outreach, with getting out there, working with the businesses that are out there. We have certain businesses that get no funding from the city, get no help from the city. And I'll use this as an example. We had a downtown association that just recently disbanded, and they disbanded with quite a bit of money. We have a gentleman who does hair for the African American community out there. I get my haircut from him also. His name is Delton. He petitioned for $5,000 for a parking lot. He was denied. And then he came back and he asked for, let's say 250 or 2,500. He was denied again. The committee disbanded, the money went somewhere. I don't know where that money went. I'm not pointing any fingers, but what I am saying is the city can do a better job identifying those businesses that are staples in our community, that help or that are there, that have been there a long time, that really pull that downtown community together. And we should be helping them, and we should help them survive. We should help them grow. And that's what I will do as your next city councilman, is I'm going to identify those businesses. If we have to, we need to do like Round Rock and put some type of committee together where we can educate new businesses on how to run a business. Some people jump headfirst into it and they really want to survive. They want to, be successful, but they don't have all the ins and outs of how to run a business. So, this is what I'll do. And my time's up. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Bob. Bob, the question to you is, do you think our Main Street downtown area is healthy and successful? And if not, what would you do to change that?
Once again, I think this is one of these situations where we have an opportunity to pull people together, put your heads together, and come up with some incentives to have people run their businesses from the downtown area. It looks a little dead right now in certain respects as you go, especially different places. If you go west on Main Street, it really kind of doesn't look like much of a business area, even though there are some businesses out there. And we love some of the shops that we get stuff from along Pecan Street there, but it's going to take encouragement and some sort of incentive. And usually that would mean some sort of financial incentive. And once again, as I said in one of my earlier comments, we may, for a time, as an incentive, suggest that people that want to open businesses along Pecan Street or Main Street there in town, we would give them a tax break for a year or two. Property taxes, something like that, to say, come to Pflugerville, we'll help you get going by, giving you a break on your property taxes, and then encourage the people. Like I say, we send out these cute little inserts in the water bill and tell them about the new shop that just opened up or the new restaurant that just opened up, and give them a try, maybe have a coupon in there for a discounted meal or something, The city has a whole department for communicating, and they're trying real hard to tell people what's going on as far as city features, the city parks, the festivals, and all those things. And that's all good. But if we could add the additional dimension that would also encourage businesses, as I've described.
Thank you. Rudy, up to you now.
Could you repeat the question? I'm so sorry. My apologies.
Yes. Do you think our Main Street downtown area is successful? And if not, tell us what you would do to change that.
So I think that one of the things that was really interesting that we found out during this pandemic is that a lot of the small local businesses that, people have come up, because I don't know if people know this, but Pflugerville has one of the disproportionate amount of entrepreneurs as compared to the rest of the region, which is fascinating to say the least, which should make you proud about people starting businesses and going from there. But the business plans that we were looking at to try to get folks to apply for CARES Act funds, et cetera, there were some things that needed to be addressed and some things that need to go from there. So one of the things that Caesar brought up regarding education, I think that's a key bit significant thing that PCDC, which is already working on. Sorry, Jim, if I let that out of the cat out of the bag, to help support these businesses when it comes to their business plans. Additionally speaking, like I said, my in-law, they've lived here, mom and dad, for 30 years. And one of the things that particularly ask is, hey, wait a minute, I don't want to have two Pflugervilles. I don't want to have, one side of town by 130, everything else growing, east side of that, and then what's going on the west side of town working from there as well. And that's the reason why the city looked through TERS and other things right there as well to see what they can do to help pull financing and work from there to help support those things to incentivize folks to go ahead and work from there and see what we can do about it. But in doing so, you have to do so in a manner that doesn't put the city at risk on its dollar. You've got to look in things right there. That was one of the biggest things we did with the Pecan District is that, hey, listen, we like your vision. You're going to, mixed use properties, do other things, bring all those things with that, but we can't be on the hook for that because that's one of the keys that we need to make sure that we don't saddle our citizens with that doing well. So do I think that, yes, we can do things to go and improve those specific areas that are absolutely, but we also got to remember this, Old Town's Old Town. And folks love living where they're at in Old Town right there as well. And we've got to respect that too as well. And so that's one of the things I'm proud of the city working to work with them to make sure that our designs and our mechanisms when it comes to this area of town reflects what they want as well as the future of Pflugerville and making sure that nobody's left behind. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you. David, you are up next. Do you need me to repeat the question?
One of the advantages of being here for more than a hot minute is that you see how the city changes over time. And I think Jim will agree with me that downtown Pflugerville is a lot more healthy and a lot more vibrant than it was 15 years ago. 15 years ago, you drove through or you walked through downtown Pflugerville and you're like, well, there's some old buildings here, but it doesn't look like there's much activity. And now, at least before the COVID, it looked like, things are happening down here. Now there are a few things that are closed up, right? The city's bought the old bank building. But I think especially right along Pecan Street, I think that is strong and going to continue to be strong. And I do agree with Rudy that mixed use development in that area is appropriate. And the people who live in Old Town want to maintain that character of that area. And one of the things I think that we should look at to pick up on Bob's idea is tax breaks for people who are using the old historic buildings in downtown Pflugerville. Right? Pflugerville doesn't have a lot of old historic buildings because there were 300 people here in 1965, but there were people here 100 years before that, and right across the street from City Hall, there's some old buildings. Some of them were destroyed in fire about 25 years ago, before I think my opponent or I, either one of us, got here. But there are still some there, and I think it's appropriate for the city to look at some of the historical building zoning, similar to what they've done down in the city of Austin and our neighbors on the other side in Round Rock, so that if you have a business in one of those buildings, as Bob said, you get a tax break, and that can help to preserve the feeling of Old Town Pflugerville. And I think that's a great idea.
All right, thank you, David. Jim, you are up with the question. Do you think our Main Street downtown area is healthy and successful? And if not, what would you do to change it?
I think it's getting better. We've seen a lot of recent growth downtown. I know when Mayor Coleman took an idea of moving his State Farm office downtown because he believed in downtown growth and he wanted to put his money where his mouth was. After being elected 3 years ago, 3 months later, I was laid off from my job. My wife and I were looking for things that we could do in town so that we could make sure that we worked here and kept a presence here to better serve our community. We looked at a place for starting our business. Everyone told us go north, go up to Stone Hill, build it up there. But one of the key components of what I campaigned on back then was investing in downtown. So I decided to put my money where my mouth is and invested down there. Let me go on the record of saying that I heard people say tax breaks to use as incentives for business. Let me go on the record of saying that is the worst idea ever. Worst idea ever to give away the money that businesses are bringing in. You think about reinvestment vehicles like a TERS, so a tax increment reinvestment zone, says that when a business comes in and puts money into that property and that property value goes up, then you have that money available to reinvest back into that area, to use that as an incentivized vehicle. Don't ever give up your tax money. Keep that close to you. Keep that in reserve so that when a business like Amazon comes here, instead of giving them a tax break, which is going to be a $200+ million property, it's going to do amazing things for our tax rolls, for our citizens, for our residential taxpayers. Instead of giving that money away, we took a $3.6 million investment from PCDC. And did we give that directly to Amazon? No, we put that into intersection improvements over at Pecan and 685. Those are the types. And how did that happen? Because Amazon wanted to be here. They wanted to be in Pflugerville because they already recognize our quality of life. So don't give away our money. Use it wisely to reinvest that into infrastructure. Don't spend that money ahead of time and ask the taxpayers to pay the money to bring the businesses here. Use that money in a perpetual way to incentivize business as it's growing.
Thank you, Jim. We're going to finish up with our last question of the evening. Apologize, we were running a little bit over, but we had some setup time. So we're going to end up on relatively on time. So the question of the hour that everybody hopefully has in their back pocket, so it's not a hard question to answer, is what makes you uniquely qualified for the position that you're running for? And I am going to start with Mr. Rogers again.
All right, neighbor. Thank you very much for inviting me tonight. It's been a pleasure. Good to hear from Jim and Rudy and Bob and Caesar. I have a variety of qualifications for this post. First of all, I've been a small businessman, ran my own retail business before I went to law school. I have the experience of working with small businesses and homeowners to help them succeed, to help them get through times of crisis. I had the experience on the PCDC, where my opponent now serves, and on the Pflugerville Board of Adjustment. So I've been inside the City Hall building and made some of the tough calls. And let me talk about one of the most important decisions that I ever made when I was on the PCDC, because it affects where we are today. The Pflugerville Community Development Corporation back in 2008 was faced with the opportunity to buy a big chunk of land at the corner of Pecan and the Toll Road. And if we did that, that was going to commit a huge amount of the PCDC budget for several years moving forward. And the vote on that was 2-2. And then it came to be my turn. And the people who voted not to do that, I have tremendous respect for. They were people who with great integrity and a lot of financial knowledge. But I said, we need to bet on Pflugerville. And today, Community Impact is there, and there are a lot of other businesses there. And Amy Madison has done a great job with PCDC in taking that risk that we took and making it pay off. And that's what I think I would like to do moving forward with Pflugerville, is bet on Pflugerville, because I think Pflugerville will win.
Thank you, David. Jim, do you need me to repeat the question, or you got it?
Good, sir. Thank you.
All right.
My career, 30-year career in IT, I did software e-commerce development, and all the .coms that I worked for, they needed the product yesterday, and so the design phase was rapidly into the prototyping phase, was rapidly into the pre-release phase, which was rapidly into the, oh wait, we're live. And you had to do all of this quickly. You had to monopolize the resources that you had available. Even if you wanted some other tool set that you didn't have it, you had to make do with what you had. And you always had to do these things within tight timelines and very tight financial constraints. You couldn't spend more money than the client had ever. And so that, combined with my service to the community in terms of my volunteerism, my wife tells me I have an issue of saying no when people demonstrate need within our community. And it's a hard thing. My friend Tom Cotter just put on a concert this last weekend. We tried to raise some money for Backpack Friends to help supplement those lunches at the schools that Rudy was talking about. These are real issues in our community that I have firsthand experience this over the last decade working with and solving and coming up with creative solutions. The last 3 years on the council have just been eye-opening in terms of the additional information that now I have in front of me in terms of making decisions and being able to make those hard decisions that may maybe negatively impact a handful of people, but proportionally for the entire community, they're good, and the community will benefit. And those are hard things, especially when people show up at council and are yelling at you and talking about bringing pitchforks. But sometimes you still have to make those hard decisions because you know it's what's best for the community. And so I hope that you've seen those decisions. I stand by my record and come, as the sign says, I live here, I work here, I play here, and hopefully on November 3rd, I can count on your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. We'll move on to Rudy. Sir, do you need me to repeat the question, or you got it?
This is our closing too, right?
That is all the things.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I heard Dave start off, then Jim went from there as well. I was thinking to myself, I was like, I think it's the closing. I was like, let's just make sure about that. I'm just a guy who grew up in a small North Texas town in the country, who's been blessed in a lot of different ways by not only the way my parents raised me, how my teachers have been, the mentors that have been in my life, to be where I am today. When I look at what we've been able to accomplish the last 3 years here, I've been pretty astounded by a lot of the challenges. Who expected a pandemic to happen? Who expected to go ahead and have a serial bomber living in their own city? Who expected to have a recession that truly we're looking at not recovering for the next several years on? But I also look at the women and men who make up this community. I look at what we've done with our Chamber of Commerce. I look at what Black Pflugerville has done. I look at, frankly speaking, look at the men and women who run these businesses, these small local businesses, and how they've been out there for each other. I look at our community groups, Rotary Club, look at the Lions Club, look at what they've done to make a difference here. Leaders don't scare people. They have frank and honest conversations, collaborate, find solutions, and work to make sure that they make a difference in our community. The city is on the right path. There are a lot of things and a lot of issues that you have to balance, because guess what's going to happen with growth? Growth is either going to go ahead and shape your community, or you're going to shape growth. So make no mistake, people are still going to come here. 2/3 of our citizens aren't here yet. One of the things that was the most eye-opening things that occurred when Jim and I went on our economic development trip with Ken Delfonso and others from PCDC was that you had McKinney, the mayor of McKinney, the mayor of Frisco, and the Prosper told us, get your citizens ready. You're 10 years behind where we're at right now with that. What I've been blessed with is the ability to listen to a variety of different viewpoints, hear opposing sides, get educated, and work together on issues. I know my role. Jim smiles when I say this. I know my role in council. I'm always a swing vote. I'm the person that's going to go ahead and see, viewpoints, ideas, balance them, and work and make a difference on that. I do that in my personal life. It's one of the reasons why the Texas Supreme Court just appointed me to the Board of Disciplinary Appeals for all the attorneys in the state of Texas. I do that at home, much to my chagrin of my wife. Trust me, that as well. That's my role on council. And I wouldn't be running for this if I didn't feel like I can make a difference. Something that Mayor Coleman, Mayor Gonzalez, Starlet Sattler, Brad Marshall, all those folks told me many years ago. I'm proud of what we've done here. We still have a lot of work to do. We're in the middle of a pandemic. But I know together, working together, having honest, serious conversations about things, truly talking about what's going on with our budget and explaining things to people, we can continue the path that Pflugerville's on, and we'll be blessed. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. Bob?
Well, for me, what makes me unique is I'm not a councilman. I've never been a councilman. I'm essentially part-time retired senior citizen. And I have, for that reason, a sensitivity to expenses and costs and how that affects seniors and others who are on fixed incomes for various reasons, sometimes disabled vets, disabled people, and so forth. I do feel that we, because of the unique, and I think it's fair to say somewhat unexpected effects of COVID compared to our plans, I think we should consider slowing some spending down for a time. I think we have a lot of good things ahead of us. But I do think because of the COVID, we need to be very careful at this particular time on spending too much money in the wrong areas. And the economy needs some time to recover so that when we do spend that money, we really know that the sales taxes and other things will flow normally in a more normal way. But I like Pflugerville. It's a wonderful bedroom community to raise a family. And I really want to work very hard to keep it that way. We need some big companies, property taxes and sales taxes, but we need to do that very carefully and be very sensitive to how it impacts the image that we give, because what attracted most of the people here is not high-rise buildings and not huge factories. What attracted people here was peace and quiet and a certain surety that this was such a wonderful place. And so my qualities is I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a realtor, I'm not a business owner, I'm just a taxpayer.
Thank you, Bob. Caesar, you have the distinction of closing out our answering of questions this evening.
All right.
We'll have a few short words from Chantel afterwards.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. And I do believe we need to make it a new rule that Rudy always goes last because, he steals all of our spotlights. So, see, I'm laughing right there. But, I really want to thank the Chamber of Commerce of Black Pflugerville for having us here and putting this together. In this time of COVID, it's been really hard to get out and get the message out and then really interact with people. And I'm really happy to be able to be here and do this. My wife and I moved here 15 years ago, and we moved here because we were looking for a town that we could really settle down and settle roots, put roots down. A town that reminded me a lot of San Angelo and a town that she never saw in California. And Pflugerville has been that place. We love Pflugerville. We've been a part of this community and everything we can do. It's been a part of us. But when I got here, I realized that I had this sense of service above self and I wanted to give back. And so that's when I started volunteering for various organizations, obviously the American Legion, but also the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, and so on. I started trying to give back because I was unfortunate enough to grow up in a very underprivileged neighborhood, and I was able to get myself out of there through hard work. And but I have a sense of giving back, and there are a lot of people out there who just need a hand up, not a handout. And I hope to be able to be that person to help them and guide the next generation. Serving on the various PTOs, even president on some, I've been able to listen. And that's the true quality of a leader, is a listener, to listen to the people, listen to their needs, listen to their fears, listen to their wants, and be able to help them put them at ease and get what they need so that they can move to the next level in their life. When we go back and, being here this long, I've seen both Jim and David bring their kids to various events. I mean, we're a family. I've seen Rudy teaching his daughter how to drive, and you're seeing that fear in his eyes, and he's holding on to the front of the vehicle and everything while she's driving. We're a family here, and this is what Pflugerville is, and this is what we're about. Recently, AK Brewer, Sheldon LeMay, and Lynn Smith and I went out and we mowed half of the Colored Edition Cemetery. Why? Because it needed to be done. We didn't seek recognition. We didn't put it out there on Facebook. We didn't do all these things because it needed to be done. And that's what I'm here for. And as your next city councilman, I'm going to do what needs to be done for you, for your family, and for our city. So once again, I thank you for having me here. And I look forward to your vote on here right now in early voting. It goes until the 30th, and we have November 3rd. So thank you again, and God bless.
Thank you, Caesar. I want to give a special thanks to everybody who showed up here, and a round of applause virtually to everybody out there who participated this evening. Hopefully this was what you wanted to hear from your council people. And I'm going to turn the floor back over to my co-host here, Chantel.
Thank you. Somehow my video got turned off. Are y'all trying to tell me something? We really can't thank you guys enough for joining us tonight. We are so appreciative to all the candidates sharing your evening with us, and also just for your willingness to serve. It is a difficult job. A lot of times I'm sure it feels very thankless. So we want to say thank you tonight for your willingness to step out there and serve. And we appreciate our voters as well for tuning in tonight and wanting to educate themselves about our local races and learning more. We support that 100%. Your vote matters so much. So educate yourself on all the races and make sure you get out and vote. And speaking of voting, early voting is going on now until October 30th. On the Chamber website, you can find a link that shows polling locations along with the wait times for each of those locations. And we also have some sample ballots up there as well. pfchamber.com under the resource tab. It's pfchamber.com/vote 2020, I believe. So yes, please check that out. And before we dismiss, I would like to also turn it over to Alicia to say a few remarks before we leave.
Thank you, Chantel, and thank you for the Chamber for asking us to co-host this event. It was very educational for me. I hope our attendees got what they needed out of it. If you go to our website, blackpflugerville.us, you will find some sample ballots, as well as, I believe there is a guide on there as well. So that's blackpflugerville.us. You can look at the ballots and see what you're going to be looking at in the polls. I want to make note that you should always go to the end of the ballot, because our races are at the end. So don't just vote for the big things and forget to scroll down. But thank you so much for tuning in.
And pray for the Cowboys.
We always do. Thank you guys again. And thank you again to all of you tuning in and spending your evening with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you for keeping us all Pflugerville strong. Love you guys. Have a good night. Thank you all.